We're going to do a new episode, Spike. Come on set. Welcome to another episode of Jimmy's Tips and Tricks. Today we're going to go over sandpaper and scraping. So sanding and scraping. I'm going to get right into it here. The old hook and loop pad, they wear out. I take them off and I just hot glue a disc on the back. It gives me a nice hockey puck to hold on to. And now where the hook and loop wasn't strong enough for the spinning motor, it's good enough for at least putting a piece of paper on just to give it a hand sand. So that's the disc from a hook and loop with a little hot glue on the back. And if you really want to get daring, you can just buy a brand new one from Home Depot and just hot glue a handle on the back. I save a lot of old razor blades because they're great for making scrapers for different shapes. For instance, here's just a piece of molding. And you could scrape paint out, or if you make a molding, you could actually get some of the saw blade marks out. And then by turning it, you can actually kind of match that curve. By turning it and tilting it, you get a nice match to that exact curve that you're working on. You hear Spike screaming in the background? Here's another trick. I take a razor blade and I put it in a bandsaw kerf. Use a little bit of scotch blue tape to take up the slack. And that stays in place. And I have a long board scraper. And then since it's just regular razor blades, we could just throw them out and use them again. And then if you turn it over, you get a resharpen because the burl rolls over. So try them one way for a little bit, and then flip them over and then another way for a little bit. Broken sanding belts come in handy for all kinds of jobs. Anything can become a sanding block. It depends on what you're sanding. You could use a pencil, you could use a can, and if you're sanding curved material, you could put this on something that's flexible. I use 3M77. Spray both surfaces, let it dry a little bit, and then it sticks down nice and clean. Whenever I make a sanding block, I go right to the very edge of the paper. In some cases, I overhang it a little bit so that when I flip it over, I can cut it exactly to the size of the board. In this way, if I'm getting inside of where two edges meet, I can get right on that edge. With a clean edge, I'm not going to sand the side of where I'm sanding. I'm only going to sand the bottom. So here's a flexible sanding block. I can go over a curve. I can also get inside of a curve. So look for anything that's flexible. Let's go, Fetzo. Let's go. I typically like to have one side of my sanding block with a full corner and one without. So again, for obvious reasons, if I wanted to just sand down and not in, I have a clean side, kind of like a file. Sometimes files have a clean side. And in this case, I have the choice of going on both sides. So that's something I always do. And always make clean edges. Because if you need to get up inside it tightly somewhere, if you need to use that corner, the sanding block's always available to be used. And I like to use MDF always for a sanding block because it's always very smooth. And that's what you want to do. You want to telegraph a nice smooth surface from a smooth sanding block. A lot of times I like to make a long board if I want to keep things nice and flat. If I have edge banding here on the end of this walnut plywood, or if I want to get rid of this water stain, I can certainly go like this and sand it off. But I'm using the edge of the board here. It's going to scratch up my veneer. So what I often like to do is cover the end of the sanding block with tape. And now it keeps the end of my block from sanding the veneer up here, and it only works where I want it over here. And I still get the benefit of having a long board and keeping everything flat. So by taping the end of your sandpaper, you're not scratching up the veneer down here where you don't need to. Spike. It's TV time, let's go. What I have here is a piece of glass, and if you want to sand things and get them nice and flat, I recommend using a piece of glass under sandpaper on the table and moving your model on the sandpaper. And here you see I have 80 grit sandpaper just spray glued to the glass. You got to be careful because as it ages, the spray glue lets go. So To avoid tearing the paper up, I always sort of hold my model at a 45-degree angle to each one of the joints of the paper. It's great for mirroring the flatness of the glass. Your object becomes flat as well. Here's another trick we like to use here in the shop. It's a long board, of course, for getting things nice and flat. We got these weights from Harbor Freight, and they just fit right in there. And if we have to sand a joint, or if we're trying to knock down the edge of something or get the paint off of something, this weight actually helps when you're working alone. Every now and again we just peel the paper off and put another piece on. When you wet sand, it's always good to work on a chunk of rubber. This is rubber I got from the local rubber shop in Manhattan. We have a Canal Rubber. They sell all kinds of different rubber chunks. And I cut this right on the bandsaw, and I cut little pieces of it off. It's just hardened rubber. And I use it for wet sanding. And a good thing to do with wet sand is use soapy water, or in some cases just use Windex. Windex works really good. The soapy water sort of lubricates the sanding process. And you know, when it gets a little gummy, you know you need more, and then you can just wipe it all away and start again. And just another little trick, since I'm sanding plexiglass, any sort of scraped up plexiglass can be brought back to life by working your way through the grits all the way up to 2000. This is 600, so you work your way up to 2000, and then you go to a polishing compound, and you can pretty much bring back any plexiglass or plastic to a brand new shine. You just got to be patient. So, soapy water, wet sanding on a rubber block. Spike, come on, buddy. When you want to sand a curved leg, use a sponge, but sometimes these sponges wear out, and you can see they become no good, but we keep them around because we use them with new sandpaper on them. And here's a trick maybe not everybody knows. On a very rare occasion, I'll use an actual notebook. I could fold my paper into the cover, and now I have a curved sanding block from a notebook. It's got that nice firmness behind it, but will also flex in the direction you need it. Here's another cool tool I've been using a lot lately. It has this long side and the short side. It's basically a long chisel and a short chisel. It's good for getting in little corners, and I use this as a scraper quite a bit. I try and keep it sharp. From Home Depot by DeWalt. It's not the most high quality tool, but it's good because I could bang on it. And we try and keep it sharp, and we always have it at the ready in the shop. New sandpaper from 3M, Pro Grade Precision. The cool thing about this stuff, it's got a rubber back. It actually is on rubber, so it takes the shape real easily of whatever it is you're working on. It's kind of like steel wool in the way that you could bunch it up. The more you use it, the softer it gets, the more you could bunch it up. It works really good when I did this lathe project. I was able to get inside the little grooves and the crevices. It comes in sheets, it comes in rolls. It's great stuff. We've been using it. Even little tiny pieces of it are useful. We just tear it off and use even little pieces. Spray glue it to something, you get it where you need it. Good stuff, check it out. Pro Grade Precision. Flexible sanding sheets. Have a kiss? If you're like me, you find the last package of sticky back sandpaper in all of Home Depot, and you don't realize it till you get home. Good thing is you could actually stick it back to back, and you get these really good little sanding discs. You peel the back off of one, peel the back off of the other, and you stick them back to back. Like I said, I don't know who in this world still has a sandpaper machine that has a sticky device. The funny thing about this stuff is that it's sticky back, and it hardly sticks to anything at all except for itself. So I don't know if that's the whole reason they made it. I doubt it, but that's what it works for here in the shop. You end up with a double-sided sanding disc that actually has some nice grip on the back of it. So I have two grits here. I have 120 and 220. I take my spray glue. and I spray glue them back to back. And that helps with holding it. And then I also always have 2 grits available if I want to work something down and then give it a fine sandpaper. And something that helps too is I put what grit it is right on it with my Sharpie. So I know what it is as I'm about to use it. I highly recommend getting a kit of scrapers. Lee Valley and Veritas sell really good scrapers, and they sell this device which helps put the burr. The way a scraper works is there's a little tiny rounded burr on each side of the scraper, and that's what actually grabs the wood fibers and pulls them away. So scrapers are really good when you need to plane over like a burl or a knot end. With a nice sharp card scraper, you actually get some nice shavings. Let you know you're removing material. An old blade from a planer. It's not good enough to use on the planer because it's got a couple of bad nicks in it, but it's good enough to tape up one side to protect your fingers and use as a scraper. Sometimes the best stand for any tool could be the vise. Quick and easy sanding blocks made with brand new belts. Just cut a piece of plywood that would fit inside there snugly, and you have yourself a block. And you could always just pop off the sandpaper and rotate it around to where it's good again, and then start again. Mike just said to me, why did I cut up the crosscut saw?